All right, guys, so day 7 here with our two buddies, and we're gonna be talking about building food drive and then leveraging that food drive in order to continue overcoming different hurdles. So we had a couple of people commenting on some of the first handful of videos we posted on YouTube asking, do you find it would be beneficial using food in these places as they were overcoming certain hurdles like getting on the agility equipment or going in public or being out and about around loud noises and all those types of things. And the answer to that is absolutely, right? Anytime we're in the teaching stages of things, especially when we're working with dogs with fear issues, obviously we need to work them past those fear-based issues, not in a bribatory way, but like making sure that they will trust us and follow us through those scenarios. But we absolutely want to be rewarding the shit out of it when they're making the correct choice, right? Any way we have to leverage all of our reinforcements, whether that's negative reinforcement, whether that's positive reinforcement, we want to be able to leverage that as best as possible. Now, the problem is a lot of times when we get these fearful dogs in, they don't take food initially, right? And even day 1, right? We hadn't even started any training. It's not like the training caused the dogs to not take food or caused them to be too terrified to take food or anything like that. They just wouldn't take food. Now, past that, tack onto it that 99.9% of people overfeed their dogs, which makes it impossible to leverage any food drive. You just kind of have a recipe for disaster. So a lot of times, especially when we get these dogs out of rescues, where there's not a lot of attention going into their diet, going into their nutrition, going into developing food drive with them and stuff like that, we're kind of starting from absolute square one with them. So obviously, the whole first week, we didn't need the food drive in order to start shaping a lot of our expectation, exposing them, socializing them, overcoming hurdles and stuff. But as we start to get that food drive, we could really, really compound on the improvements that we're making. So in these two dogs' cases, the first thing that we did day 1 when they came in is we looked at the feeding. And if I recall, I think I still have it written down. Let's see. Yeah, so both of these dogs were getting AM, PM, a half a can of dog food. That's one of those big, what are those, like 12-ounce cans? Is that about what they are? So 12-ounce cans, right? With 1 cup of dry dog food with water added on top of that. Now, water obviously isn't adding caloric content. That's for hydration purposes and likely to make it a little bit more appetizing as you make like a mush of a meal for these dogs. But when you figure this dog, who's the bigger of the two, right, I just weighed him this morning because we do our weekly weigh-ins with all the dogs here, weighs 46 pounds, right? 46 pounds eating 2 cups of dry kibble and an entire can of dog food a day on top of that is an absurd amount of food. It's an absurd amount of calories. These dogs weren't getting anywhere near enough exercise to be able to burn that off. And frankly, the majority of dogs that do get exercised extremely well aren't even eating that much, right? So the first thing we need to do is we need to get them on a baseline diet where they're motivated to eat their food, they're not being picky over stuff, and we have a balanced approach where they're eating everything we put down for them, they're not leaving anything extra in the bowl, and we're leaving a little bit of drive for more so we can leverage that for our training purposes. So what we did is right off the rip, based on what we've seen with other dogs roughly their size before, and based on their fear-based issues we had, is we switched them both to a 1/4 cup of dry kibble in the morning, a 1/4 cup of dry kibble in the afternoon. So a 1/2 cup total a day. That's for the initial week of building the food drive. Once that food drive is there and they're balanced out, we'll assess from there. Do we need to up it more? Do we need to decrease it more? Now, on top of that, we have to factor in the type of food that they're on. So they're on an Origin brand kibble, which Origin is a very, very rich, calorie-dense food, which even though a 1/4 cup of kibble doesn't sound like it's very much, that in comparison to your average Purina dog chow or any of those other types of food is going to have very, very different nutritional densities to it. So with the high quality foods like Origin, you're not gonna need to feed as much in order for these dogs to get their calories as well as their nutrition in, right? So these are commonly overlooked things, which is when we're dealing with massive behavioral issues, we've got to get the diet under control. Can we train these dogs without it? Sure, but are we going to be fighting an uphill road of basically just relying on compulsion, consequences, and physical negative reinforcement in order to teach all this stuff? Yes, and that's going to be very challenging to help them continue to move past things the way we want. So that's how we started establishing some food drive and got these dogs to a place where they haven't taken food out of hand until just recently because we had to develop that food drive over time. We have an entire blog post on our website you guys could read that's all on building food drive with your dog and all the step-by-step plans we take in order to figure it out with every single individual dog that we have. Recommend you check that out. So what we're going to do is we're going to just work 7 here through some basic training exercises. I have no massive expectations of anything crazy, right? I have no huge expectations of him doing crazy bed stays and down stays and sit stays and all this kind of stuff. I just want to see him learning to work for the food with me so that we could teach the expectations so we could start to prove the expectations. So I'm going to start with some bed stays and we'll see what we get. Bed. Good. Okay. Now, ironically, the very first repetition I do, distraction walking in, which is totally fine. Bed. But the positive thing, good, is that you'll notice even though that distraction presented itself, we were able to redirect him using the negative reinforcement with the leash pressure, then use the positive reinforcement with the food drive in order to get him re-engaged back onto us around these things that otherwise were triggers in the past for him. Okay. So we'll do that a few times. Bed. Good. Okay. Bed. Good. Making sure we're using super clear markers here. We're establishing our language, right? So obviously the language of the leash pressure has already been established with him. Okay. So now we're using the language of our positive reinforcement markers, which is our good marker here. Bed. So you'll notice, good. The second that forepaws get on the bed, I'm clearly marking with good, well before I ever go to grab a reward out of my pocket. Okay. Then I'm presenting that reward after the fact to condition in that that word predicts food reward. Bed. Good. Which should start to show in him shifting his attention to me before I ever go to even grab that reward. Okay. Bed. Good. Beautiful. Okay. And this attention, this confidence, obviously we saw it pick up as we just worked him through the stuff without the food, but if we didn't build this food drive, we would not be seeing it continue to compound like this. So we're going to do the same thing with some sits next. Sit. Good. Same deal, clear marker coming the second he completes the command. Okay. Sit. Good. Okay. Sit. Good. And we'll generalize to the other bed. Okay. Bed. Good. Okay. Come on. Bed. Good. Okay, so next we're going to start adding some duration into this. Bed. Good. So get him in position, mark and reward, and then start creating some distance. And whenever he's doing well with it, good. Can mark and reward again. So we'll have him continue to hold this as the dog comes by, and I could utilize that good marker while in position for good repetitions here. No. Bed. Good. Okay. So as the dog's confidence builds up, we'll start to see little things like that begin to pop out of him, right? Bed. Good. And anytime we're doing training sessions, I'm not going to get super firm on him over the expectation of the command, but what I am going to do is get firm on him over the expectation of the behaviors that I want out of him. And obviously reactivity is something that he previously was struggling with, and as his confidence is coming up, he's going to start to want to test those boundaries, and we have to be in a position to communicate that that's something that we don't want him to do right away the second that we see it, so he realizes as that confidence comes up, there is a cap to how intense you can get with your behavior still. Okay. Bed. Good. And then generally post a correction like that, you'll have a couple of repetitions of kind of rebuilding the dog back up. They're going to be a little bit apprehensive. Again, I'm not going to be firm on him at all over the expectation of the command right now, so I'm just going to ease him back into doing that. It's normal that post a correction. Good. They're going to try to triple make sure they're doing the right thing, which is going to cause them to not be as outgoing with trying different things, like figuring out what it is we're expecting of them. Okay. Bed. Good. Good. Okay. Bed. Good. Good. Okay. Do one more like that. Bed. Good. Good. Okay. Bed. Good. Okay. Bed. So this is an excellent example of the same process, but with a very different dog. So obviously these two are litter mates. Even though they're litter mates, though, temperament-wise, they're very different. 7 tends to come out of his shell much easier when you start establishing some rules and boundaries, where 6 tends to shut down a little bit more when she's away from him, right? So you'll notice when we were doing our socials and those clips and stuff, when she's out with him, she does extremely well, but when she's separated, she still has a hard time being able to really disconnect and be a little bit more independent, and that just comes from that litter mate syndrome, obviously. So she is very hit or miss with taking the food still, right? With 7, he just started taking the food consistently in training as of yesterday. With her, she was 50-50 in her session yesterday. She sometimes took it, sometimes didn't take it. But getting back to the reason why we work these dogs past these fears without the need of the food initially is because I could still work her exactly the same as him. I could still work in the same fashion of teaching the commands using my negative reinforcement with the leash pressure, and I could still offer the food while still helping her learn some of the routines and the structure that we want until she's in a place where she's consistently taking the food. Okay, so we'll see as we move through this session if some of that starts coming out of her. She was showing a little bit of interest in the treats I was dropping on the ground. Bed. Good. We'll see if that continues to stay the same or not. Very good. Okay. Now additionally, bed. Good. In this stage of training, we're not going out of our way to work in extremely distracting scenarios, but what we are going to do is allow them to just happen organically. So with 7, obviously we had a dog walk through, great opportunity to address some of the reactivity. With 6, you see she's picking up the food. Of course, my sneeze would startle her out of doing it. With 6, obviously, she doesn't have the reactivity issues that 7 had. She just has kind of the squirminess, the fearfulness, apprehensiveness, obviously. So her just working on stabilizing in the presence of those distractions as they organically happen is massively important as well. Okay. Bed. Good. Very close. Okay. Bed. Very good. So I'll just let her sit there, eat the kibble off of the bed now. Realize you can take it. You can take it in the presence of me. If she's more comfortable taking it off of the bed initially, I don't have any sort of issue with providing it that way. Okay. Bed. Good job. Good. Beautiful. Okay. So anytime you get a dog, whether they have food drive or not, you just have to work the dog and understand bed. Good. The quadrants in which you're using, and as long as you're using them in an efficient fashion, you will continue to make progress like this. Okay, and some dogs take longer than others to develop good enough food drive to overcome some of these types of hurdles, especially with a dog like her, massively fearful. Bed. Good. It still may be a couple days. It still may be another week before she's very consistently at a place where she's reliably taking food from us. And that's all right. We have the time to work through it. And because we're addressing her behavioral issues in other ways without the need of the obedience commands right now, there's no time crunch. I would rather take my time through these early stages, okay, and build a really great working relationship with her. Bed. Good. Okay. Now with 7, because his food drive was pretty good, we were pushing a lot of the obedience commands. We were working actual bed stays. Bed. Good. We were doing some generalization work, things like that. With her, we're going to keep things really, really easy with just the core command. So I'm going to be working just getting onto the bed and getting into the sit position. Now, additionally, if you look over there, they're grinding nails, they're doing Dremels, we got different noises and stuff the dogs aren't used to hearing. Okay, which provides additional distractions for them to be able to overcome and work through. Bed. Good. Again, not intentionally seeking them out, but not avoiding them either. Life provides training opportunities wherever you look, as long as you just kind of let them happen. Okay. Sit. Good. Okay. Sit. And you see again how it comes and goes in waves. As we're changing things up, creates a little additional stress. Good. Okay. Sit. Good. Okay. You see it coming back in waves. Sit. So we'll see as we keep moving through the week here and keep doing more sessions, this will get more and more consistent. Good. Just like we saw with everything else we've worked on. Okay. Sit. Good. Okay.